Welcome back, everyone, to Issues of Faith. Happy to have with us Dr. Paul Lim, Vanderbilt Professor, talking about following Jesus in a very polarized world. The world is polarized politically, and as we were going to break, we were talking about it's so easy to sum people up D or R, and that's my side or whatever, and the detriment that is to churches, and we need to get past that and get more into just one-on-one conversations. And I mentioned this YouTube video where you kind of share your past that has a million hits, and which is a remarkable thing. But is that kind of getting at it, and kind of, I guess, share a little bit about your past?
Okay. Sure. So I came to America when I was 15, and so I didn't speak much English at all. And then by God's providence, I ended up going to Yale as an undergraduate. And the video that you're referring to is something called From Atheist to Christian at Yale. And it was a video, as a testimony that I gave unwillingly, actually, because they said, well, please do this. And I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be captured in a YouTube video talking about my own conversion story. But I grew up in a non-religious context, but when I became a Christian, my life really changed a lot. It wasn't to a particular religious denomination. I knew I became a Christian. I didn't know anything except for the fact that the Bible is a good book to read if I want to know something more about Jesus and the Christian tradition. So I began that journey in 1988, and it's been about 31 years. So the video that I did was just kind of narrating my own life's journey so far, and in that video I actually talked a lot about my own foibles and failures and my own sense of inadequacy, especially in high school, right? Because having just come from South Korea, I didn't have a lot of friends, and my experience at this Korean church's youth group was that I felt that I was more alone there than anywhere else. And one of the most interesting things is that I've gotten a lot of emails since that video was, that talk was done in November 2017, and several hundred emails. Many of them actually talk about the fact that they resonated with my story of vulnerability and weakness and sense of inadequacy. And then it kind of hit me hard. I said, you know what, isn't the Christian faith actually about that? All of you who feel like you don't belong, all of you who feel like you're misfits, all of you feel like you are marginal and you don't really matter or count, that's why the Son of God came and died, right? And so to me, that is the beauty of the Christian gospel. You come just as you are. You don't have to be prepared, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be, propertied or home. None of that matters. At the foot of the cross, there is a really radical leveling ground. And so for me, whether you're religiously right or left, it doesn't matter. I think increasingly, as I'm in my 50s now, I care more about what kind of person you are. And I am fundamentally committed to seeing the image of God in every person. And so I think to me, it's one of the things that has polarized our cultural context in America, I think, is since 9/11, life just hasn't been the same. So you mentioned D and R, Democrats and Republicans. I also think that in that equation, we must insert C and M, Christians and Muslims, right? And so last semester, I got to teach a course with a good friend, Richard McGregor, a course called Through the Eyes of the Other, A History of Muslim-Christian Relations, in which we actually kind of surveyed together. He is a medieval Islamicist, I'm an early modern Christian historian. We talked about how Muslims and Christians, in that historical coexistence, how have they actually sought to cultivate spaces of intimacy, or hospitality or hostility. And so it was a very fascinating story. And I think as a result of it, we had Muslim students, we have secular students, we had Christian students. And one of the things that we were committed to doing was we're going to actually suspend our own prejudices and judgments and really kind of try to understand one another from the other side, right? So if I want to understand myself, I need the other to show me. So similarly, I think one of the books that I often teach is Calvin's Institutes. And John Calvin, in the very first book, asks this question, declares that to know myself, I need to know God, and to know God, I need to know myself. So right there's an intrinsic circularity. And for Calvin, the answer is found in Jesus Christ, that Jesus, as perfectly human and perfectly divine being, cuts through that kind of the Gordian knot of our human dilemma. How do I know myself? How do I know God? Look at Christ, because by looking at Jesus, you'll come to understand yourself better. By looking at Jesus, that you will also understand God better. So I think we're back to the basics. The radical Jesus means that fundamentally, Christ is someone who is not requiring perfection from you. God says, you know what, come as you are. I don't care where you have been, whether you got it figured out or not, especially if you feel like you don't measure up, that's perfect. That's the kind of person that I need. I mean, think about the early followers of Jesus. Were they well educated? Had they been to rabbinic schools? Far from it. Were they part of the political elites? No, they were tax collectors and fishermen mostly.
And I saw you say somewhere, it's not about who we are,
right,
whether it be the Democrat, Republican,
right,
Christian, Muslim necessarily. It's about whose we are.
Right, absolutely.
And,
yes.
And we forget that.
Yes. I mean, so that belonging part, I mean, our culture is really about belonging, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if you remember the song by Christina Aguilera, Beautiful. It was quite a few years old.
It's a great song.
Yeah, it's a great song. And it really says, you know what, no matter what others say, you know you're beautiful, right? So then I think life is about belonging to the right people, through marriage or friendships, through kind of groups and organizations and institutions. Think about the message that the church should be sending today. That is, you know what? You belong here. Because, as the world is becoming more globalized and polarized, people are finding their kind of their places of belonging to be reduced even smaller and smaller. They feel more vulnerable, they feel more isolated, they feel more alone. I mean, especially as a result of social media, right?
And that's why they attach on to these identities.
Yes, yes. But at the same time, these identities are what I would call idols. They're hollow gods. They're not really there. Because you think by having 400, Instagram followers or 4,000 Instagram followers, are you 10 times happier? What if you have 400,000 followers? Are you happier, or are you going to be upset if no one likes your kind of posting? So these things have been kind of established for us to find satisfaction in the wrong place. I'm not saying that social media is the main culprit of all of our problems, but it is also indicative of our desires to find things of ultimacy and significance, perhaps not in the right place.
I agree.
Yes.
All right, so in our final minute and a half,
sure,
this is impossible what I'm going to ask you. In our final minute and a half, do you have hope as a historian, where we're going?
Yes.
Can we turn things around?
Yes.
Are things as bad as maybe some people feel they are? What do you see for the future? Do you have hope for
yes.
the future?
So, as a Christian, I remain an eternal optimist, because when human failures abound, there is also divine grace abounding, right? So I have to believe that. I have to believe that because from Genesis to Revelation, the God of Israel, the God of Jesus Christ, is the one who says, I am with you and I am for you and I will not leave you nor forsake you. So, we think it is polarized, and it is polarized, it seems to me, but the game's not over yet. The story is still being written. So I think, as Christ was rightly called in St. Matthew's Gospel, Emmanuel, God with us, that means we might feel forsaken, but from, again, both testaments, both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, clearly affirm the fact that God has not abandoned us to ourselves. So that is my hope and prayer and joy.
I really appreciate you coming on. Dr. Paul Lim, Vanderbilt Professor, that was great. Thank you very much. And now we should all go and have dinner with someone that we don't know that well. Thanks for watching Issues of Faith. Have a great day, everybody.